G'day guys, and welcome to another VemaTrader tutorial video. My name is Reese, and in today's video I'm going to be covering the relationship between position size, fees, account risk, and leverage. So it's a super common question that we get, people saying, hey, I want to reduce the leverage that Vem is using so that I can pay less in fees. That comes from a fundamental misunderstanding of how position sizing and trading works. So in this video I'm going to try and really explain to you guys why things are the way that they are. Righto, so this really ties in with a common question I get about what percentage do you use for your stop loss, or what percentage should I use for my stop loss? And my answer to that is I have no idea, because I have no idea what percentage I usually use for my stop loss, because I don't care what percentage I usually use for my stop loss. I am someone who looks at previous price action and then just chucks my stop loss on the other side of that action. So in this case, if this was a previous price action that we've drawn in here, I look at that and I go, cool. I want my stop loss to be below that previous price action. So it's going to be something like that. Then I do the same for my take profit. Well, what was previous price action? Where was previous resistance? Where do I think there's a good chance that sellers may step in? Somewhere around up here, and then I always front run it just a little bit. So it's going to be something like that. Now you'll notice that I didn't go, okay, my minimum risk to reward for a trade is 2 to 1. So I'll just put my take profit twice as far from entry as my stop loss is. There's a very good reason I don't do that. Imagine that my take profit had ended up here. There was some previous resistance here. I set this trade up and then I look at that and go, cool, does not meet my trade plan. I'm not taking that trade. For me, it all comes back to previous price action. So with that out of the way, imagine that we have a long setup. So we're looking to catch this bounce. We have that as our stop loss, and our take profit. Now we're going to take this as a paper trade because it makes the account balance $10,000, which makes everything nice and easy for me. So we then make our stop loss and take profit match what we had previously. So our stop loss, $490. Now I'm going to put it in as a 2% because that actually gets us to $490, but it makes the maths easier for me while I'm doing things rather than having to use the dollar figure. And the take profit was at 550.6. I'm actually just going to give that a 10%. Which will give us a 550, right? Now, when I'm actually setting up trades, I wouldn't do that. I would just use those fixed values and I would just drag the take profit stop loss to where I want it to be. But because I'm going to show you guys some things with the maths, I am lazy and want some nice, easy maths rather than trying to use 10.26 or something like that. So I'm going to get rid of this, so I've got a bit more room. I'm going to get rid of this, so I've got a bit more room. And then we'll get stuck into it. Okay, so we have our setup. Now, you can see that we want to risk 1%. Well, like I said before, we have a $10,000 balance, and 1% of $10,000 is $100. So what Vema will then do to calculate our position size is go, okay, what position size with this 2% stop loss would lead to $100 being lost if this stop loss gets hit? So the value that it's returned is $1,000. Now, how did it get that value? Well, what we can do is we can look at, we have a 1,000 contract position. Now, what is a contract? Well, a contract for OKX is, let me just get the right template up. A contract for OKX is 0.01 Bitcoin. So for this trade, we're looking at a $500 entry, again, because it makes the math easier for me, so I set it up that way. We're looking at a $500 entry, which means 0.01 of a Bitcoin at $500 would be worth $5 each. So Vema has calculated that our position value, right, in USD must be $5,000. So we can check that. We can make sure that's right. We have a 1,000 contract position. Each contract is worth $5. That gives us a position value of $5,000. Now we know, because our stop loss is 2%, if our stop loss gets hit, we would expect to lose 2% of our position value, which is that $5,000 figure. So I can bring up my calculator, and I've actually already done this. We have $5,000, that's our position value, times the 0.02, which is our stop loss expressed as a decimal, gives us a $100 loss. So if our stop loss is hit, we would lose $100. So you can see that Vema has matched the stop loss to the account risk that we've set as our account risk. So we've told Vema we want to risk 1% of a $10,000 account. Vema said, cool, that's $100. We've told Vema our stop loss is 2%, and Vema has said, cool, if you want to lose $100 with a 2% stop loss, entering at $500, that means your position size has to be $1,000 because that gives the value of $5,000. Now, one of the questions that really commonly comes up, how do I change my leverage to reduce my fees? Well, the answer is you cannot. Changing your leverage does not affect the fees whatsoever. So what we can do is we can come to OKX's calculator and show that really well. So you can see that Vemma gave us a leverage of 19.6. So we put in our 19.6 leverage. 19.6 leverage. We were opening the trade at $5,000. We were closing it at $490. That's where our stop loss was. And we were opening 1,000 contracts. So if we calculate that, I have done something wrong there. One too many zeros. If we calculate that, you can see that that gives us a taker fee, which is what it is, because it's a market stop loss, of $2.50. Cool. So what about if we change our leverage to reduce our fees, like a lot of people seem to want to do? Well, let's make this back to 1,000 because it's still going to be 1,000 because we know that we have to have 1,000 contracts at $500 to be risking that $100. So we've now dropped our leverage right down to 1. Well, our P&L is the same. We still lose $100, but our fees are the same. Nothing changed about our fees because our fees are based on the position size. We're going to do the same if we go to a higher leverage, right? Imagine we use 50x leverage. Chances are we're going to be liquidated before this even gets to our stop loss, but again, we open that 1,000 contract position at $500 with our 490 stop loss. We calculate that. Again, P&L does not change. Still lose $100. Fees do not change. Still lose that $2.50. So you can see that the leverage does not affect the fees at all. Now you can also see that there is only one position size for our stop loss that will give us the correct account risk. So, you know, people say, oh, I want to reduce my position size to pay less in fees. Well, cool, you can definitely do that. But what happens if we reduce our position size? So let's just make this back to 19.6. And then we reduce our position size. So before we had 1,000, let's just take a 500 contract position size. Well, cool. We just halved our fees, but you can see our P&L also went down. Now, instead of losing $100, we're only losing 50. So instead of risking 1% of our account, we're now only risking 0.5%. Now that's cool. It's good to reduce your risk wherever you can, but by halving your position size, you also halve the amount of profit that you make. So the ratio doesn't change, right? The scale stays the same. We've halved our position size, we've halved our risk, we've also halved our reward. So the risk to reward stays exactly the same. Nothing changes there. At the end of the day, for every given stop loss, there is only one correct position size that will lead to the correct account risk, right? So we've told Vemma that we want to risk $100. The only way that we can risk $100 if we enter that trade at that price with that 2% stop loss is with our 1,000 contract position size. So that's kind of just the be all and end all. But what I will do is I will show you guys the effect that position size and fees do have on your trading as things change. So probably the most common way that people will notice that fees begin to impact their trading is when they begin to scalp. So what we've done is we've come down to the 1 minute time frame, which means that everything is so much more zoomed in. So we might see quite similar price action, right? In terms of the shape of it, but all of a sudden the values become significantly smaller than what they were when we're looking at things on the 4 hour. So where previously we had a 2% stop loss, now a 0.2% might be more adequate. Where we had a 10% take profit, that might now map to a 1% take profit because we are scalping. So you can see that that does not change our entry price, right? We're still entering at $500. It also does not change our risk to reward. That is still a 5 to 1. The take profit is still 5 times what the stop loss was. But what it does change is the position size. So our position size was previously 1,000. It is now 10,000 contracts. And the reason for that is that it has to increase to keep us at that $100 risk, right? That 1% that we've selected, because our account risk is 1%, that 1% of $10,000, which is our balance. So how does the maths work? Well, we have our 10,000 contract position. At $500, that is now worth $50,000. We stand to lose 0.2% of that, which means we will lose $100, right? 50,000 times 0.002 gives us a $100 loss. So you can see that Vemma has done the position size calculation correctly again. It has made the position size quite significantly larger to still keep us at that $100 loss. Now, if we had stuck with the same position size that we had previously, what I will do, sorry, I'm just trying to have a think. Let's get rid of this, make it a little bit cleaner. Let's put this here. What I'll do is I'll show you guys. Imagine if we had kept the exact same position size, so our 1,000 contract position size, but now because our stop loss is so much smaller because we're scalping, we're going to lose 0.2% of that. Well, where is my calculator? We would then have, we still got a 5,000 position value because we're still entering the same price with the same amount of contracts, but now instead of losing instead of losing 2%, which we lost previously, we'd now only be losing 0.002, right? Because we're now scalping. So we'd only be losing $10. So you can see why Vemma has to scale the position size up so much when you are scalping, because there is only one position size for any given stop loss that will map to the correct account risk, right? So, sorry, that will map to the correct account risk in terms of a dollar figure, right? That $100 here, because you can imagine if we were trying to map to 1%, as your account balance changes, that value will change. But for the sake of this, that $100 is what we're trying to get to. So Vemma needs to make your position size whatever it needs to be to make you lose that $100 if your stop loss gets hit. So hopefully that shows you guys, how position sizing works and why it works the way that it does, how leverage has no impact on it. Now, the last thing that I want to emphasize is this risk reward with fees. So if you guys remember when we were looking at the 4-hour trade and we had the 2% and the 10%, this was 4.73. It has dropped massively to 3.1 because the fees are so much larger compared to our P&L, right? We are still losing that $100 if this trade loses, but our fees, which were about $4.95 before, are now at $50. So as a percentage of our P&L, that is now 50% of our P&L, where previously, with the 10% and the 2%, the fees we were looking at were $4.95, right? So about 5% of the total P&L. So you can see it makes a massive difference to your risk to reward with fees, which is why we show that figure when you do begin to scalp. And it's not scalping specifically that causes this, right? It is the small stop loss values, which lead to large position sizes to give the correct account risk, that are the actual cause of this, but you tend to get those large position sizes so much more often when scalping because you are typically looking at much smaller moves. So your stop loss percentage typically becomes much smaller, leading to those bigger position sizes, leading to those bigger fees, but your P&L isn't actually changing because you are still risking the same amount of your account, that $100. And chances are your targets will also shrink. So you are shooting for the same, risk to reward. We still have a 5-to-1. But the impact of the fees on those trades becomes so much more significant. So I really hope that helps clear up a few things for you guys. Try to address a few common misconceptions in this video that do typically get raised and they all kind of overlap at certain points. Hopefully that has helped. Have a great day, happy trading, and I will talk to you very soon.